Curtis, DIYer.
DIYers, over the last week, a well-respected independent lyricist and Benny the Butcher has some interesting things to say that has sparked up a lot of interesting conversations about not only the state of hip-hop, but the voices that control the narratives in hip-hop. Here in this caption, this video was clipped, I think, from a live stream. Benny the Butcher says the voice of the streets no longer carries weight in the culture because the nerds are in control. Interesting. Let's hear what he had to say.
Hey, yo, y'all see what state the game is in when the streets don't hold the culture of the game? Now that the weird Twitter nerds and the nerds and all of these weird motherfuckers got, you know what I mean, they got their hands on the culture. The voice of the streets don't mean as much as it did when we was coming up. There was a lot of cons to that as well. You know what I'm saying? I gotta say that, but you see what happened when the streets, you know what I mean, don't control the game no more. It's a lot of fuck nigga shit going on, man. And a lot of people's okay with it because they're fuck niggas, man.
I want to run it back one more time and kind of break down what I'm receiving from each part of this, because it's hard to understand the full context without watching the full live stream. And I searched for it. It's not on his platforms or whatnot, or not even on YouTube. It's hard to understand what question may have been asked that prompted this response. But to be honest with you, when I first saw it, I didn't understand all the controversy around it. As you start to realize who feels like they're on the receiving end of this conversation, it starts to make a little bit more sense. Let me hear it one more time.
Hey, yo, y'all see what state the game is in when the streets don't hold the culture of the game?
Now, my first question is, what does he believe the state of the game is right now? Especially when I think about the type of projects that have been held up in critical acclaim this year and the amount of lyricists that have popped up and really, to me, have made the conversation, the coverage, and even the economy hyper-focused on artists that really take the time to dive into their craft, dive into their art form. I think that's good across the board, especially for a lyricist like Benny the Butcher, who's going to give you the punchlines, he's going to give you the double entendres, he's going to give you a lot of these concepts that hip-hop fans, aficionados, are going to appreciate. So I would love to know what state of the game he's talking about specifically.
Now that the weird Twitter nerds and the nerds and all of these weird motherfuckers got, you know what I mean, they got their hands on the culture. The voice of the streets don't mean as much as it did when we was coming up. There was a lot of cons to that as well.
So I'm thinking, as I initially hear this, I'm thinking, okay, Twitter nerds, the narratives that are pushed by people that are not within the culture, not of the culture, from neighborhoods that have nothing to do with it, that are speaking on this said culture without having invested any time themselves. Yeah, I see the problem. I see the problem in that all the time, where you got people who are butting their nose in street business and politics that has nothing to do with them, and they're honestly instigating on both sides in situations. Now, that's how I pull from it, but it seems like he has a more specific person he's speaking to. And I think this is where it's important to put addresses on the names, right? It's important to name names in this situation because it is very broad of who that could be. Because, I mean, when you think about folks who are quote-unquote nerds, that could easily be somebody who is a lyric nerd, somebody who is a journalist who digs into this and cares about the details of what concerns this artist and the culture around their music. But it's a wide net. Now, he does get specific about this voice of the streets, and I start to think about, there was always a time period where you had an artist that was the undeniable voice of the streets. I think about DMX, especially after that long period after Tupac and Biggie were murdered. And you had this long span where people were trying to figure out, yo, what is that voice of the voiceless? Who is representing him? And DMX made his way. Now, based upon the way the industry treated the DMX, I could understand why people either wouldn't want to be in position to be the voice of the streets in this current environment. And I could also see how label heads and labels in the music business itself would make it difficult for them to exist because you can't control them, huh?
Somebody gonna have to tell the truth, and I'm gonna tell it.
You can't control them. They couldn't control a DMX. All they could do was incarcerate him and slow him down, but you can't control a DMX, especially when he feels like he is speaking for an audience that is not being represented in these boardrooms and whatnot.
You see what happened when the you know what I mean, don't control the game no more. It's a lot of fuck nigga shit going on, man. And a lot of people's okay with it because they're fuck niggas, man.
Hey, I got my own issues when I'm thinking about, like, quote unquote nerds. The first people that come to me is playlist curators. I can't stand y'all. I can't stand some of y'all, not all of y'all. I can't stand some of y'all because you are dictating or you have a voice in what music should sound like. You ain't never picked a damn instrument up in your life. I'm thinking about these AI music tech. Okay, let's move on. Complex did an article where they basically talked about Benny the Butcher believes the soul of hip hop has shifted away from the streets and he's not happy about it. It says this was pulled from a recent Instagram live session where the Buffalo bred Griselda rapper voiced his frustrations over what he sees as the culture being overtaken by people with little connection to its roots. Now, I told you this was a conversation that went viral, ironically, on Twitter. He talks about the quote-unquote Twitter nerds, and you know they're going to say something about it, whatever that case may be. Now, I don't want to categorize everybody in here as Twitter nerds because he needs to be specific about that. But I do see a lot of familiar faces in here. Shout out to the Rap Roundtable. They said, as a quoted tweet, they said, Benny, the nerds support your music the most, champ. Oof. Ice from the Joe Budden podcast says, another day, another rapper realizing that the streets are the minority in the grand scheme of things. Interesting. Someone named Lade said, the difference between Pusha T and Benny, Pusha evolved, tapped into the nerd crowd with fresh aesthetics and unconventional branding without selling out. This is his words. Meanwhile, dusty-ass Benny the Butcher still stuck in 1993, clinging to outdated values instead of pivoting. Oh, he pissed some people off. This was probably the most solid response that I saw because it started to spark other thoughts about the statement that he made. Brian Z said, message to all artists. Please talk to your fans. Learn what they love about your music and be part of the communities that form around it. You might just realize you already have what you're looking for. Hey now.
Somebody gonna have to tell the truth, and I'm gonna tell it.
Now, as I started to think about this, I had a conversation with Justin Hunt the other day, and we were kind of discussing back and forth, and he was telling me about ideas of projects and things that Benny the Butcher had put out before, because I was familiar with the music, but not so much about the merchandise. And when I think about the merchandise that he has, which this is fire merchandise, you're talking about $60 hoodies, you're talking about $34, $40 t-shirts. There's a certain demographic that I feel like this is geared towards. When I think about a $100 hoodie, and I'm looking at this and I'm looking at the designs, and I'm like, there's a certain demographic, and it's smart of the artist to do this, but there's a certain nerd demographic that has the funds and the money to pay more than the usual for merchandise. It brings me back to that statement here. Please talk to your fans. Learn what they love about your music and be part of the communities that form it. Then I think about this post right here. You know, as independent artists, I know that we have to always figure out ways and streams of income to support what we're doing. And I'm not saying in no way that Benny the Butcher is hurting for the money. But the same internet that is making these statements, the same nerds that he's complaining about, he's also presenting this opportunity to them. I don't know if you saw this clip, but peep it out.
Big Butch, and I got another one for all my grinders. This is what we gonna do. Thank me later for this shit, man. You gonna get a free verse, a free video, and you get to come to the show and open up. And we gonna put the record out on Black Soprano Records. All you gotta do is send your song to the email and $100 to the Cash App, and you win there.
Somebody gonna have to tell the truth, and I'm gonna tell it.
If I was running this kind of a campaign, I probably wouldn't want to piss off the nerds who probably got nerdy ass jobs and nerdy ass paychecks to pay for this type of opportunity. You know, but hey, maybe this is like, you know what I'm saying, a way for him to like fight back against the nerds and like come up off their money, like tapping their pockets. Maybe this is what that is. I don't know. Some other thoughts that were shared before I get to my bigger thought about this, because I think what he's experiencing, because we're around the same age, I think what he's experiencing is the same thing that many folks around our age group are experiencing, which is the death of monoculture. There's an excellent post on Instagram that we're going to cover that talks about this, but hold off for just a second. Here's another opinion that was on here by Kevin Ali. Kevin Ali said, most street rappers don't represent hip hop. They're just promoting a bullshit ass lifestyle. Benny is the last of a dying breed. So with that being said, Because it's not enough, Benny, I wouldn't want the streets running rap. I want hip-hop historians running rap. It's an interesting point of view. Shout out to my dog Ninja. He had a really laid out one, and I could tell he's more of a fan of Benny the Butcher, so maybe he's more at liberty to speak on some of these things. I think to a certain degree that there was a lot of unwarranted outrage over Benny's comments, but I also feel like he 100% did not articulate his argument well. I agree that the power and influence of hip-hop music has been stripped away from the targeted demographic and given to people that do not understand or care to know the cultural nuances and history that make this genre what it is today, 50 plus years since its inception. I 1,000% agree with that.
Somebody gonna have to tell the truth, and I'm gonna tell it.
There are a lot of people who get in front of these podcast microphones and they say the most outlandish things, and the moment that they get in there and they collaborate with somebody that presses them on these details, they start to expose how much of a lack of knowledge they have about the things they speak on. There are a lot of people who feel like because I've listened to something, because I'm a fan of one artist, that means I have the right to speak on all artists. Because I'm a fan of one artist, that means I'm a fan of hip hop, and that's just not the reality of it. It's no different than sports. If you're a fan of one singular player, are you really a fan of the team? Are you really a fan of the sport? Or is it just that individual player? I think where Benny effed up is that he forgot that the street niggas don't listen to Benny the Butcher. Interesting. The people that listen to Benny are hip-hop fans that still value lyricism with street imagery. This is a niche demographic at this point that tends to be the nerds he was speaking out against. I also feel like Benny has been speaking out of frustration all year, and I think it comes from the Griselda wave kind of dying out. Although Westside Gunn has put out great projects this year, there's an overall staleness that is coming from Griselda members. These are his words, not my own. They really need to find new ways of elevating their style without compromising, whether it's working with different producers, working in song structure into their music, or finding ways to elevate how they write their music. The novelty of them rapping on retro 90s beats has worn off, and Benny specifically needs to find a way of reinventing himself without compromising what made people gravitate to his music. Now, these are some interesting points that I definitely need to give more thought to. As I think about it, me knowing my peers, me knowing myself as an artist, you tend to start to get nostalgic about good old days when there was for example, a voice of the streets. You start to get nostalgic when you start to feel like your current environment is not satisfying your expectations, I think. I think there is something to that. When you start to feel like, man, the amount of work that is being put in is not being appreciated nearly as much as folks who may have a larger platform, folks who are just looking for the things that bring them clicks. I can see that narrative kind of taking over. I do feel like there's a bigger conversation here, and it's talking about the death of monoculture. And I thought this was such an amazing post here by an individual named Jordan Schwartz, because even though it's going to talk about more broadly than music, I think a lot of people are trying to make sense of it in our culture, hip hop, of what's happening and why are people not on the same page. Because when I think about, I guess, this version of this generation, the closest thing I think of voice of the streets, voice of the voiceless, the somebody who is being championed by black and brown folks, I think about somebody like NBA Youngboy. I may not be a fan, but I see what's happening at these shows after he wasn't allowed to perform. You see the kind of excitement that is around there, and you don't necessarily hear him on mainstream platforms all the time. So these are the kind of people that I'm thinking about now, not necessarily lyricists that are supremely detailed in their writing. But I want to get into this conversation, the death of monoculture. This is talking about really the death of mainstream as we have known it. First Lie says, remember when everyone talked about the same things? Pokemon Go, Avengers Endgames. We were connected. Yeah, I skipped it. The algorithm prison. Along comes TikTok and their revolutionary algorithm. It learned your desires and built you a prison of perfect, personalized content. No escape. These are the nerds that I think he might be wanting to point some of that vitriol to. Because those are the ones who have determined who is being elevated, who is being shown on everybody's timeline. I think your issue with Elon, it might be with Elon. Isolated streams. We once swam together in one massive cultural river, right? Whether it was through us having the same access to the same channels. Now we could very well be watching our own TV shows on completely different streaming platforms and never cross paths at all. Like, you could be watching a whole nother show that is exclusively on Netflix. I could be watching one exclusively on Hulu. Now we swim in billions of tiny isolated streams. Nothing breaks through. Your favorite artist is talking about music can't capture attention like before. It says here, a #1 hit today, 2025, gets 50% fewer streams than 2017.
Somebody gonna have to tell the truth, and I'm gonna tell it.
People are breaking away into their own corners, including the streets, including the human beings that are in these streets. They're breaking away into their own subcultures, into their own pockets, and finding the things that they identify with the strongest. Continuing on, it says it's a numbers game. It's why someone like Taylor Swift, this is before her new album, releases 31-track albums, because she needed more chances to hit your personalized feed. If one of the largest pop stars in the game had to release 31-track albums to crack the same algorithm, brother, this is deeper than the streets. This is a matter of, we can't even access the people who have already tapped in, who have already brought themselves into the conversation and said, yes, I'm opting in. You can't even access them. This is what's happening. The new rules. You got to niche down. I think this is something that Benny the Butcher has done well. Target everyone, reach no one. Don't be vanilla. In infinite niches, bland content dies or is ignored completely. This, to me, goes back to that statement that Brian Z made. Please talk to your fans. Learn what they love about your music and be a part of the communities that form around it. You may find that although the stories that you're telling are from the perspective and the narrative of a street dude that had these specific type of experiences, the people who see it as entertainment, the people who see it as something that they will pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars for, either through the vinyls, either through the physical media, the digital media, or through your merchandise, might actually be nerds in comparison or contrast to the people that you grew up with. Unless these folks is just somebody you hitting a lick on, it might be something worth acknowledging. The world isn't lonelier because people changed. It's lonelier because the systems connecting us all disappeared. Ain't no Rap City. There's not an opportunity. There are media outlets, but there's not an expectation, maybe like a Breakfast Club to a certain degree. There's not an expectation of the places that somebody needs to show up to in order for you to deem them, oh, that person is running the game. That rollout is that's it. Like, we need to focus on this person and what they have to offer with a new project. One more video that I wanted to react to kind of speaks on this, but I think it speaks more so towards something that we spoke about, the necessity to gatekeep. And maybe to a certain degree, this is what Benny the Butcher is talking about, is that nerds don't come in one color. They don't come in one flavor. Pause. Certain nerds are more problematic than others. There are people who recklessly move around here who do not have the best wishes for those who create the art. Matter of fact, all they care about is destruction. All they care about is themselves and their own self-serving goals. But there are some nerds out here. There's a lot of producers that he works with that some may deem that, whatever the case may be. I'm not saying this about the legendary Statik Selektah, but he had this to say about the state of the game, and I think it overlaps a bit. Check this out.
Hey, man, I might have woke up on the wrong side of the bed today, but it's all good. I got time for this shit today. Motherfuckers complain about gatekeeping and all this shit. We need that shit back, because not everybody with a fucking podcast setup should be able to get a platform. This shit is set up for mediocrity to win, man. We used to try to just protect the culture. Now y'all letting anyone talk. This shit is crazy.
Hey. He's not lying. He's not lying. I think this has been something that we've echoed many of times. And I echo this not just as somebody with a channel, but as somebody who's an artist and producer and has been so for 20 years plus. I've seen the embrace of mediocrity, and some of that may be purposely the embrace of mediocrity, the promotion of mediocrity within the traditional record label system. But then I think some of that is the side effects of the death of monoculture, and that everybody's not having the same experience. All of us are not gravitating towards an artist for the same exact reasons, because we haven't had the same exact experiences. Some people may have experience this artist on their favorite podcast that none of us watch, but we experience them solely because of the music that they're putting out. Who knows? But there are a lot of people here that have built platforms, and because they built a platform, people have in their minds looked at them as specialists on things they have absolutely no experience and no business speaking on. So I hear him.
On every level, we went from a society that, like, you had to pay dues in this. Now it's like anyone can be the director of the FBI or president, or like, the shit is a joke out here.
Shots.
But forget about the political shit. Let's go back to hip hop. The gatekeepers were protecting what you heard. Like the mixtape DJs, the fucking radio DJs, the journalists. And I watched the real journalists that we all love now look sad and depressed because you got a bunch of clowns that never even been outside in their whole life talking about shit and getting all these views and changing how people think about things. It's like, sit the fuck down, bro. You got a fucking $200 podcast set up. Nobody cares.
Not you getting on their focus, right?
You're gonna have to tell the truth, and I'm gonna
Not
tell
you,
it.
not Statik. Not you get on their focus, right? I hear him. I will counter with this, though, and maybe this is something that he's already doing. Being an OG in the game, I feel like if you see that kind of an issue occurring, I think that is an opportunity. Not a responsibility, but an opportunity to put somebody younger who understands these values and these principles. It's an opportunity to put them in position to become a rivaling streamer, right? To use your leverage, use your network to bring guests to their platform that'll get their platform going, get their platform popping, and everybody starts looking at them as, oh, this is somebody I should pay attention to because they too are doing numbers. There was a time when I first came into this space as a content creator myself, after, of course, doing music, for real doing music, still doing music, and I would get frustrated with it. But I realized, like, if you're not doing the numbers, you're not part of the conversation. You got to figure out a way to get in this conversation to shift some of these narratives that are going on, or at least counter them. But I think that he's already doing that in a responsible way by using his platform to speak on these things. And it seems like a lot of legends in the game, Ninth Wonder, Rob Markman, House Shoes, you know what I'm saying? A lot of folks are in agreement with what he's saying because he's not lying. There's a lot of people who are platforming absolute nonsense simply because they know it's going to do views. And they're not platforming the people who truly care about this art form and are great as fuck at what they do. It's unfortunate, but I do think that's an opportunity to create rivaling podcasters or rivaling influencers, whatever you want to call them, that have been properly prepared to speak on these topics.
It's just the way the shit is funneled now, man. I think it's a deeper thing going on where the powers that be want everybody to have the voice to help separate things and stir up the ants. And when you shake the bag of ants, you know what happens. They end up killing each other. That's what's happening in this hip-hop shit. It's what happened to society right now. But I just want to let y'all know I love you.
You're not lying, Statik Selektah. Appreciate you using your platform.
And I'm gonna tell it.
Here's some final thoughts that I have on it, because I think that last part really speaks to the powers that be maybe wanting these things to be exactly like this, wanting to bring an opportunity for folks who normally wouldn't have a voice to become their own superstars in their own minds, to have reach that is able to get to people that normally they wouldn't get to because they don't have a skill set to offer. Their skill set becomes their audacity to talk crazy about things that they don't know about. I do think there is a very focused effort to make mediocre the new mainstream, to make things as dumbed down as possible, because I think it makes the introduction of AI and mediocre AI videos, mediocre AI information and advice, it makes it seem like it's easier to replace human beings with, because you're doing the job that this machine is going to eventually replace and do so much better, so much faster. It can be mediocre a lot faster, a lot quicker, and a lot more consistently than most human beings. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. It feels like it is another shot at the anti-intellectualism movement that has been against all the things that have been pushing for a more artistic, a more informed, a more aware, a more socially conscious hip hop. But I think that the people are speaking out, and I think there's a reason for it. But what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts? Do you agree or disagree with what Benny the Butcher had to say? Do you agree or disagree with what Statik Selektah had to say? Please leave those down below in the comments, and I'll go peep them out.